Hello everyone, Burb here. For today's lecture, I'd like to go and continue our discussion about runaways. I said yesterday this would be a very large topic. I would like to go and expand the scope of what we talked about yesterday. There's a lot of things about runaways that we know and that we observe. The point of this video is to go and use mechanics and mathematics to prove that the things that we are seeing make sense, as well as use that to form conjecture about other parts of the game so that we can be all better Umamusume players. So far, I think it has achieved those goals. Yesterday, I talked about a very specific part about the effect of runaways on the pack, which is basically overtake mode versus pace up mode. So frontrunners have an inherent advantage because overtake mode is better than pace up mode, and that is what we were discussing. It's a very thin scope. The point of this video is I'm going to expand out that scope by going and adding all the caveats that I can know of about that analysis, add them to that analysis to see the actual delta diff between running a runaway and not running a runaway, and then going over the consequences of running a runaway as a front runner, as a pace chaser, late surger, and closer that you may or may not know of. I've limited it to 10 things, so I may not get through everything, but there may be another video as well. So feel free to go and put more things in the comments for me to look into. I think I have done a very good job about trying to incorporate the 10 most important things. This is not a corrections video. The previous video is correct. Its scope is very small because I'm trying to put these in digestible pieces. The scope is going to expand a little bit from this, and that's the point of that, okay? Special thanks this video from Koyu from Team Uma Party. I believe that is the same team as VF Charles as well as Cat Bomb. I could be wrong on that, but Koyu was very helpful in making sure that the things I was talking about make sense from a frontrunner perspective, from someone who plays frontrunners regularly. Okay, so him and I were talking in Discord, and we kind of went one-on-one through each of these points I'm going to be making and made sure that they at least made sense. Okay, so I appreciate that greatly. This is the third video on a series of 4 about the early race. I think it's going to be a meme at this point that every single video is going to be one away from completion because we're never going to solve the early race. What we discussed on the previous video is that runaways have an inherent advantage for frontrunners. That is 1.83 lengths from the fact that overtake mode is better than pace up mode, and you constantly put your Umas into overtake mode as a frontrunner when you run a runaway. That seems like quite a lot, and as a backline player, that feels like 3 to 4 white skills or 2 golds on the Tokyo 1600 meter. This is all from the lens of the next champions meeting CM14. That's a lot. However, that is the advantage coming from parity and not from not running a runaway. And there's something that I omitted, and I omitted due to time, and that is speed up mode. Speed up mode exists. Speed up mode is just a fact of life for frontrunners. It is an advantage that they have that is necessary for them to create that early advantage. Basically, they have pace up mode from first position. Now, the entry condition is more reasonable, like the overtake condition. However, it is only a 4% speed increase and not a 5% speed increase. Basically, what happens is if there's less than 4.5 meters from second place and you pass the wit check, you get the speed modifier. That 4% increase versus the overtake mode's 5% increase is a 20% decrease over the overtake mode. So it is 20% worse than overtake mode, and you can just do the same math and find it's 1.46 lengths as an advantage for frontrunners rather than the 1.83 lengths that we calculated over the position keep of the Tokyo 1600 meter. And this scales with track length. Okay, so if you do the math and you subtract the lengths gained from just using no runaway versus the lengths gained from being in overtake mode the entirety of time, you get the delta frontrunner diff of 0.37 lengths, which doesn't seem like a lot. You can even argue that if you're in second place, you're in overtake mode, and if you're jostling position and you're in it 50-50, it's half of that. It's 0.18 because you're going to be in overtake mode half the time, and you're going to be in speed up mode half the time. That is all in theory for a very specific reason, in that speed up mode has an uptime that is not 100% because of its condition. That condition is you have to be 4.5 meters or closer. One of the criticisms on the previous video that I need to definitely take into account is, hey, let's talk in terms of horse length. That's 1.9 horse lengths. As the race gets longer, it is much more difficult to achieve exactly 1.9 horse lengths or smaller, and it doesn't always 100% happen. Now, it happens frequently, but there's a lot of RNG that goes into it. That speed up mode is semi-random. It is technically controllable, but the way you're going to build your Umas is you want to throw as much things as possible on your front runner so they create the biggest advantage. The strength of two fronts, the stronger the two fronts there technically will be more variance. However, if the two fronts are both incredibly strong, hypothetically and statistically, they should be pacing up each other a lot. Okay, so a lot of things go into this. A lot of things that I can't really go and explain via math, unfortunately, but basically the two biggest things that happen are the wit checks for pace up mode or overtake mode on your secondary front runners, as well as your skill proc timing. So if a front runner goes really far forward, like a V bourbon, and procs a gold skill at the same time, you're not going to have 100% uptime because that 4.5 meters is going to be too far forward. Now, it's close to 100%-ish, but I'm going to show you how this uptime affects it, okay? So if you have 50% speed up uptime, which I think is a little bit low, you're going to find you get 1.1 lengths of increase by running a Runaway because you basically divide the lengths gained by 2. What I think is a more reasonable estimate is a 50% speed up uptime plus a 25% overtake mode. I think you're going to be jostling for position in the early race, and then you will go and probably proc a skill. That skill will push you outside of the range, and then finally you will have everyone else pace up, and then in the second half or so you will probably get a lot of boost and a lot of speed up from them at that point. So I think a very good estimate is 25% overtake mode, 50% speed up uptime, and for the very good front runner that's usually in front, because you should be making good front runners, you'll get about a 0.64 length increase, which is much less than the 1.8, but it's still basically a gold skill, so it's quite effective as well. There's a lot of other things that Runaways do. You have the speed up mode, and this 0.64 length increase is quite good. However, there's a lot of things that Runaway do. One of them is they stretch the pack. Like we said, this is using the observable thing is they stretch the pack. Now, one of the things that happens is on the corner where it's difficult to pass, it will allow the front runners to use the inner rail, which is smaller, which uses less running time, and it's also easier to go. It's also harder to pass. So when you proc your skills, you may not need to be passing somebody on that corner, and instead you can observe that you get more effect from those skills in general. Future burp here. I didn't explain that exactly the way I wanted it to, but basically either you will not be passing somebody on the inner rail, but also when you go and you go into overtake mode and then you go and proc your skills, you will more successfully pass people. There is a point on this later, and that is why I was stumbling about this. But basically, because you are succeeding on your passes more often, you are on the inner rail more because you will pass them and then re-enter into lane 1 rather than failing your pass and staying on lane 2, lane 3, lane 4, etc., etc. That is the effect that it has, and I'm giving into the estimate, I think, of 0.2 lengths as well. Lane 1, lower distance, and you have less failed overtakes in that case. That's the big one, is the failed overtakes. I estimate because corner's not really that, in the position keep is not very that high, it's probably another 0.2 lengths, because let's say you have a failed overtake every 5 corners in it. Due to your skills, it's impossible to model this, but I think there is a little bit of an advantage because the Runaways stretch out the pack and allow you to use the corner more effectively, okay? Also, as a note, number 4, overtake mode and speed up mode both go and add to skills. So even though we're talking about minuscule additions like, a half length or 3/4 length expected value, that expected value can be added onto your skills and hit your thresholds. You're not just talking about, hey, you gain a half length from proccing a skill, you gain a half length from doing a pace up mode like we're doing. Every single advantage could be a pixel from going and passing and proccing a skill like ramp up to complete your pass, and that is where you gain your advantage. It's like you're going home. In America, we have stoplights, and it's like you're going home, and every single time you speed up a little bit, you speed by 2 miles an hour, and it might not give you anything, because when you get to the spotlight, you're basically normalized back into the speed limit. But if you go 70 miles an hour and 65, which I do not suggest, do not break the law, you technically could go and skip a light cycle. It's kind of like that in the passing. You need a threshold to hit the pass that gives you the lengths and allows you to keep the advantage from your skills combined with the pace ups. There's a lot of things that go into that we'll talk about. This does extend out of position keep. The most noticeable one is KFC, or Kiss for Courage. Kiss for Courage happens in the mid-race, and if you get a good pace up outside the last bit of the position keep and you proc Kiss for Courage, that is a massive speed increase that adds onto the overtake, and you're going to see basically Summer Marzensky shoot forward in that mid-race, pass a bunch of people, and then go and slot into that first rail and basically complete the pass successfully. So Summer Marzensky with pass combo and a good pace up can run away with it coming out of section number 10. Number 5, the advantage gain is race length dependent. As we discussed here, it may be a 0.27 length on the Tokyo 1600 meter, but on the 2400 meter, like the Derby, it might be a half length, and on the 3200 meter, it is a 0.75 length. The useful part about the race length increasing is that basically that thresholding thing that I talked about. There's a lot of things talking about thresholding. Let's just say and simplify that you need 3.5 seconds to complete the pass. This is a simplification. It is roughly close to how much it would take if you were in pace up mode. If you're in pace up mode and you need that 1.3 lengths and it takes you 3.5 lengths while in pace up mode to do so, if you are on a shorter track, it is very difficult to hit that from overtake mode alone, because the overtake mode for 1600 meter is one section. A section is 1/24th of the race. That takes 4 seconds to complete. That 4 seconds has to somehow fit 3.5 seconds inside of it. There's not much leeway, so it would have to be procking from a zone where you're like right butted up against them, but somehow are able to navigate around them in that 4 seconds of pace up mode or overtake mode. Right? In the 3200 meter, it might be 7 seconds. It's almost double the length. It's really easy to hit 3.5 seconds just from the wit check because everything is stretched out, and that mode is still the same. You still need to pass by getting through someone, like past them with the whole length, get a little bit more, and slot back into that first lane. Yeah, that's what I said. Shorter tracks generally will need skills to combo more often than longer tracks, which can just RNG hit pace ups. So those straight skills, those early race skills that you're seeing on a lot of Mile characters like Mile Maven are very powerful, not only because they're rare early race skills, but also because they can go and they can basically go and complete passes in situations where you would not normally do so because it is so difficult to do so. The next thing I think is one of the most important topics. Number 6, the non-ideal frontrunner. You should be building great frontrunners. However, you cannot control the other frontrunners in your lobby. You are a very good player. You can make incredible frontrunners that have everything you need. Let's say player B is just okay. They get placed in your CM lobby. They get placed in your 5v5 draft, etc., etc. You know, it could be a crash and burn 5v5 draft, and it's a bad frontrunner. That frontrunner says 900 wit and has like half your mid race because it didn't roll, it didn't roll escape artist, or it didn't go and get enough skill points to grab so. So they don't even, and let's say they're running like Ines Fusion, who doesn't even have a mid race ult at all, where you're running V Bourbon, who has a ridiculously good mid race ultimate that usually procs pretty early. Most times you will win, because the better frontrunners mid-race should hit first place, should hit angling and scheming. However, not every time the better frontrunner wins, and this is why. Because, let's take this example into consideration. We're in the Derby, let's say, and in the Derby we have Ines Fusion and we have V Bourbon. What happens out of the gate is Ines Fusion maybe goes and misses a skill, while V Bourbon just plays V Bourbon and procs Operation Cacao and every gold skill in the game right at the very start. When that happens, in the situation without a runaway, Ines Fusion is going to go into overtake mode because she is not in first. However, V Bourbon, because she has such a large advantage over the other frontrunner, is too far away to proc speed up because we are longer than 4.5 meters or 1.9 lengths. So Ines Fusion gets an advantage, and with a lucky wit roll, will go and basically normalize the advantage. It may not be completely, but it'll be enough that it is noticeable, and it's a lot of free lengths. In that position, the position keep ends with you in the lead. However, you have exhausted a lot of your gold skills, and now Ines Fusion is able to proc Wild Wind, Slipstream, playtime's over, it's on, do the full combo on you, and you've exhausted every single mid-race skill in the early race, just due to race skill RNG, like skill timing RNG. She then passes you, and all of a sudden the late race happens, and she's the one hitting angling and scheming. That is what is happening. Now, with the Runaway, while she is pace upping due to overtake mode, you are also in overtake mode. which means that you gain lengths and she gains lengths, and that is normalized. She procs her skills, you proc her skills, and now you have an advantage because you have the better mid-race, you have more mid-race, and you have both paced up. You may have more wit, so you may get more overtake mode as well. The better frontrunner should win over other frontrunners more consistently with a runaway present because it basically removes that particular form of RNG. It removes the, the catch-up condition of you not procking your pace up while they proc their overtake mode, or their speed up rather. So by running a runaway, what you are saying is, yeah, that's fine. We'll talk about that. By adding a runaway, what you're doing is you're signing up and saying, hey, I'm just better than you at building frontrunners. So make sure that your frontrunner is incredibly good, although otherwise another frontrunner is going to come in that's better than yours, possibly run a second runaway, and then basically win that from you because you've lost your catch-up ability at that point. So that is why good frontrunners should run runaways, and not so good frontrunners are probably better without a runaway in general. Okay? Theoretically, two perfect fronts with the same skills and equal skills and the same characters should push each other because they should be at the same part of the race, but skill RNG basically says, hey, my escape artist is going to proc immediately, my cacao is going to proc immediately, and your cacao is not going to proc immediately for some reason. I don't know why. There's maybe a third one, and you're not going to proc escape artist, and now I'm 9 lengths ahead of you, or 6 lengths ahead of you for that half second, and that's going to go and screw up all of us at that point. The thing is, number 7, what are you losing as a front runner? I'm going to grab a drink of water, sorry. So, you're not really losing much as a front runner by running a runaway because of the thing I like to call one rod syndrome. You have one horse that can hit angling and scheming inherit or angling and scheming, and you want to be first place on like 90% of the maps. And that means the difference between you running 2 good fronts and 1 runaway versus you running 3 fronts is a loss of a gamble ticket, essentially. In addition, you gain lengths over the entire pack, and you possibly, if you have the better front runner, gain consistency, like I said, because the wit matters more, your skills matter more because of the runaway, because overtake mode normalizes it, like I said. You have 1 less tick in the front lobby. Make sure your front is good enough to go and win consistently on its own. On long late race tracks like Tokyo that have very long late races, like the current Derby and the next CM, you need every advantage that you can get. And what runaways do, even though it may only be a half length, if you count the corner plus the actual diff, it is a half length, so it's basically like running a Dominator debuffer on the rest of the lobby. Again, it's not exactly, because there's still a lot of RNG. Because, number 8, the consequence of running a runaway as a front runner in general too is that PDM is also greatly reduced for all the backline roles, not just you getting into overtake mode, for the pace chasers, late surgers, and end closers also proccing their skills. And it's especially true for pace chasers. It is incredible how much that they gain from a runaway. That hasn't really been talked about too much. The Tokyo 1600 meter, converting this also by lengths, pace chasers only need to be 1.2 lengths or farther away to go and not PDM themselves. 3 lengths is their lower limit. Lates want to be 3.8 lengths, and ends want to be 4.4 lengths to 4.7 lengths. Like I said, this is sort of a box analogy that I did, and the boxes shift forward when a runaway existed because the lead horse is the runaway and not the front runners. If you notice, this pace chaser box is clipping into what I would say is the front runner standard positioning. If your front runners aren't great, 1, you're going to get kidnapped, and 2, you're going to have the pace chasers pace up themselves, choose a random spot in this green box, could choose in front of you, and they get a massive amount of legs. This happens with end closers and late surgers, although their positions are further back, so you will probably not see the effect as much. It can still happen, and it can still help a lot. The other thing that really happens is any PDM break or acceleration we'll talk about, any PDM break is locked in value. If you don't have a runaway in lobby and your lead horse is not the greatest in the world, you can PDM the backliners unintentionally mainly, but the Umamusume that you grab on your gold chip, etc., is possibly going to be eaten up by that's a bad term because I use that for other things. It's going to pace down mode because you then are too close to the front runners when the skill runs out. Right? So the Umamusume on a non-runaway lobby could PDM back into it and cause kidnapping, but then it goes back into the standard 7 to 8, and you only get the Umastand advantage of being in front of everybody else and having your skills be all good. The same thing happens with post section 1 PDM acceleration increase, which means, let's talk about this, sorry. Umastand is 1. It's a guaranteed PDM break 2100 meters or more. Straight skill RNG on everything less than 2100 meters. It could proc immediately and basically be a Umastand proc as well. That is why also Runaways are more effective on shorter tracks, because there is not that guaranteed PDM break for Umastand like we said before. The third thing that matters, and this is the first time that I'm talking about this, Shrewd Step. Shrewd Step is a post section 1 PDM accelerant increase, and it's been the hot topic recently. This is the situation where I will talk about Shrewd Step, and I will have a dedicated video eventually, but this is the time you grab Shrewd Step. If there's a runaway in lobby, you are not worried about PDM, you're not worried about the lengths gaining yourself, re-PDMing yourself afterwards, especially as a pace chaser, building Shrewd Step. Those lengths that you gain from that acceleration are locked in, and is a very efficient skill at that point. Also, Tail mentioned, I guess. And Fighter exists. I'll make a video on it. Probably don't pick it up, man. I'll tell you about the proc conditions when it happens, but it's basically Shrewd Step that doesn't proc ever because, his overtake is funny. You can still be PDM'd when there's a runaway. This is not guaranteed. It's based on too many factors. You could hypothetically go and proc a bunch of skills and the runaway could not be as good and it still would get there, although it is quite unlikely. So don't take everything as gospel. Go and use your own justification based on how good your backliners are built, because you do have a multiple gold skill level of leeway because it is 2 to 3 lengths in this. You could hypothetically pace up into proccing a gold skill early, like, Taiki Shuttle hitting Mile Maven after being paced up, and then all of a sudden you're right next to the front runners and you PDM yourself. That's still possible. It's just many less conditions for it to actually occur than when a runaway is not present. Number 9 is a word of warning for fronts and all, because using runaways can be done in all other roles because of the PDM on your backliners, because you have basically the same reasons to run them as the front runners. It's just you get a little bit less on the base, right? So you can chariot. This is what charioting is using a runaway to support your other roles. And the rabbit's position, the rabbit condition, or the rabbiting works for other roles because Nimble Nav and NSM can proc off of anybody. Instead of going and hoping that you're going to pass the roll in front of you, you could run a runaway, tune it properly, which is a whole nother video, through the use of wit for pace chasers probably, and also power or stamina for the backliners, although it is a lot more finicky and probably not worth it. You could hypothetically use your runaway as a nimble nav piece after you have it do its work by basically removing the PDM for mainly your pace chasers. Pace chasers get so much from runaways that it's if a good built pace chaser can go and fight those front runners with the lengths gained. The other lost art that people keep forgetting about is that runaways can be used as angling and scheming blockers. Now it's difficult because you have to run it in Unity. How you would do this is you need decent enough speed to hold your position in the late race, basically a way to delay angling and scheming enough that they don't get anything, as well as they don't nimble nav off of you if they're running a runaway themselves. Max your power and max your wit because, hey, you need to go and win the mid-race, and you need enough mid-race to fight the incredible amount of mid-race that the front runners have. It's very risky to do this, but also, you can do front debuffs as well if you really want to go and try to go and remove the front runners from the game from stealing, angling, and scheming. This also doesn't work on every track, especially the next track as well, because there is a second place Excel, Victoria por Plancha. The same thing happens on long tracks because of Kittison Blackall also procs from second place. If there's more than one runaway, what's going to happen, especially on long tracks, this is number 3, it makes it very difficult because now stamina is an issue because those two runaways will spot struggle, burn through their stamina, and then all of a sudden, the stamina that you thought you needed because you're still having to get a bunch of stats because you're running this in Unity Cup, you're now basically rabbiting them for free. Remember, front runners still get the advantage on the runaways. So if your strategy of stealing, angling, and scheming doesn't work, what you have done is you have helped your front runners you're trying to block and then made a rabbit for them because now they can nimble nav proc off of you. That is the trouble with running a runaway just purely to steal angling and scheming, especially if they're also running runaways for their own purposes. Finally, you are pushing the average lobby position back, which is why I'm saying you probably need a pace chaser in this, because you need at least a singular ticket to hopefully hit Nishino alt. If you're running a runaway and there's two front runners, all of a sudden there's Nishino alt available for pretty much everybody. Like, especially if you're causing a runaway to go and die. If you want your runaway to go and be pushed back in the pack, you're pushing the pack forward at the ideal time for pace chasers to hit Nishino, and also you're pushing and spreading out the pack enough that late surges and end closers are going to be able to use trace and cheer. This is what I mentioned in the previous video of sort of the, I would say, the counter, but it makes it a little bit more reliable than it actually is, because it's hard to sniff 5th place in the first half when your runaway is in 1st place and then goes and dies in the second half of the race. Okay, those are runaway blocker caveats that if you try to steal angling and scheming, it can go horribly, horribly wrong. So do it at your own risk, and it's based off of the strength of your runaway in general. That has been all the caveats, at least 10 caveats and consequences for running runaways. I hope that this has expanded the scope a little bit more than the previous video. It's been quite an undertaking, to be honest, and the early race will never really be 100% solved because of how complicated it is. However, it has been slowly understood, and I hope that this has broadened your view a little bit, and you can go and start testing things from yourself and going and looking at other content to form your own opinion about it. I hope that it's been enjoyable. There probably will be another video about runaways eventually, as there's more things discussed about it. But this has been quite a fun topic for me to go into. So I hope that this has helped you formulate. I already said all that. So I appreciate it. I'm working on the CM guides. This has been through the lens of CM14, so I think it has been useful for the next Champions meeting. Got some nice content to follow. Appreciate you guys. Take care. Burb out.